Let's unbox the Micro Galaxy Squadron Series 4 TIE Interceptor.
Villa Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it.
Hello there, thanks for visiting Villa Varykino. Now I am a very big fan and collector of the Micro Galaxy Squadron line by Jazwares. Unfortunately though, Series 4 never showed up here in New Zealand. We did get Series 5, but after waiting and waiting, it was clear that we were never going to get Series 4. So I found a stockist in Australia and recently picked up the TIE Interceptor and the A-Wing, both from Series 4, and they are both from Return of the Jedi. They both feature the 40th anniversary sticker. So, having recently opened up the Hot Wheels Starships Select TIE Interceptor, I'm very keen to get this Micro Galaxy Squadron TIE Interceptor out of the packaging so I can compare the two, because there are always some interesting differences and similarities between those two product lines. I'm very keen to see them side by side. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll get the Micro Galaxy Squadron TIE Interceptor out of the packaging so we can check out all of the cool details. But first, let's take one last look at the packaging. The Series 4 TIE Interceptor is part of the Micro Galaxy Squadron Light Armor class, so we have fairly standardized packaging for the Light Armor class here. We have a large bubble on a backing card. We've got the large Star Wars logo there on the front. We have the stripe across the front with the Micro Galaxy Squadron logo, the silver stripe which reads TIE Interceptor, and this one is number 0078. Here on the front we have the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi foil sticker applied to the front of the bubble. And we can also see that we have one minifigure for this vehicle, the TIE Pilot. We have a little bit of an insert here showing some of the details. It's a little bit hard to read what's going on here. Very keen to get this one open and check it out. The TIE Interceptor itself is packaged on its side, so we can see the top of the cockpit. I can see a rubber band there holding that one in place so it doesn't swing open. Not my most favorite presentation for a ship. I kind of like them a little bit more angled. We can clearly see the top of it, but they kind of look a little bit awkward from this angle. We can see that there is a little bit of space around it, but not as much as other ships. It's actually taking up a pretty good amount of space in there, just fitting between the front and the backing card there. On the back, we have sort of a hologram rendition here of the TIE Interceptor. We've got some of the features. We've got what looks to be a sort of a back canopy opening here. We've got the figure fitting into the cockpit. We also have, as usual, the collectible blueprint that you can cut out and keep if you discard your packaging, again with a bit of a blueprint style image of the TIE Interceptor and the cockpit here by itself, which is kind of a bit fun. We have the Light Armor class banner here and some of the other ships from this particular Series 4 assortment of Light Armor class here. So we can see some of the other regular vehicles, and then over here we have the chase ones, and I am particularly sad because, as I mentioned, Series 4 did not arrive here in New Zealand, so I have zero chance of finding these in the wild. My only hope for collecting the iconic Landspeeder is on the secondary market, so that one's on my wish list for the meanwhile. I cannot find it locally. I'm very sad about that. I do wish that they just kept it to variations like this red TIE Interceptor here, rather than having whole unique vehicles as chasers. Just my little bit of a quibble there with the Micro Galaxy Squadron line. I know fans will really want to add that one to their collection, and unfortunately it's going to be very rare. Overall, pretty cool packaging. Not my favorite way to display the TIE Interceptor, but it's a bit of a tight fit in there, so I do understand why it's on its side, but I think this one's definitely going to look much cooler out of the packaging, so let's open it up. One of the reasons why I always keep my Micro Galaxy Squadron packaging is the really cool backing card art. We can see that we have the second Death Star with all of the Rebellion ships here in the front. We've got a B-Wing, a TIE Interceptor, and an iconic X-Wings flying here from the front, shooting a TIE fighter. I really do like the backing card art. It's always really full of action. Now I have the TIE Interceptor out of the packaging. We also have a clear plastic support stand, but I want to first check out the included TIE Pilot minifigure. The little cardboard insert's got the nameplate there, and on the back we have a blueprint style image of the figure, so you can see all of those tiny little details. I'm always impressed with the level of detail and paint application on these very tiny figures. You can see just how small they are. Of course, the TIE Pilot outfit is pretty pretty much black head to toe, but we do still have some small painted details. We've got a silver belt buckle, some silver paint applications on the chest box there, and we have some tiny silver stylized Imperial symbol cog details on the helmet on both sides. That is so tiny. I'm not even sure how well the camera is going to pick that up. That's so tiny. I can't believe they can actually get that detail on there. If I tried to hand paint that, there'd just be a blob of silver paint there. So of course, to be able to get the figure into the cockpit, we're going to have to put him into a seated pilot position. He can raise his arms up there at the shoulders and he can bend at the hips to get into a sort of standard cockpit position, like all of the other humanoid figures that come in this line. Of course, he would generally bend at the knees if we were getting him really accurate, but I'm still impressed with the level of articulation with this figure. It's pretty standard across the line. All of the pilot figures sit like this and they fit in there pretty well. So we'll test him in the cockpit very shortly, but first I want to check out this TIE Interceptor. I love all of the TIE fighter variants. This one is really interesting. There's something really aggressive about these pointed front pieces. It just sort of feels like it's trying to just physically spike you, even though of course that's not the case. This one is very grey, I have to say. There's always kind of a little bit of debate about the true color of TIE fighters, TIE Interceptors and things like that. They range from sort of being very pale to almost white to blue to grey. Kind of depends on the toys and the books and things like that. There's kind of the Star Wars media that you consumed as a child, to sort of the colors that you feel are more true. Of course, for me, I remember a lot of the Hasbro toys, which had a very strong blue tint, almost to the point of sort of a blue-green. And a lot of the Lego sets in those sort of early 2000s were often quite blue as well. So I tend to think of TIE Fighters as having a bit more of a blue tint. So it's kind of interesting to me to see this being a very true grey, very mid-grey, almost a pale grey here as well. I don't seem to have any weathering on this one. Some of the other vehicles have sort of a bit of a subtle black wash to sort of accent some of the details. I don't see any weathering on this one. Kind of fun. I often think of these sort of Empire ships as being clean, but sometimes just having a little bit of a wash really highlights all of the sculpting details, so you can still see them all very clearly there. And of course, we've got the really cool sort of texture for the black wing panels here. There's quite a good texture to that. Really nice. Just a bit of dust. Of course, I got this straight out of the box. Oh, fantastic. I was really hoping to get my hands on this one. I was so sad. Of course, with every wave, there are certain vehicles that really stand out to different collectors. I really like the TIE Fighter variant, so I'm really happy that I was able to source this one from overseas. Thankfully, this was not a chase of some sort. So I can feel, oh, okay, I can feel a button here. That's kind of fun. We're going to have to check out some of the details, and I get the feeling most of them are around the cockpit. I just want to check. I feel like the wings are on very sturdily. This one, I can creak just a little bit. This one, that's on very sturdily. I do not believe, based on the diagrams on the box, that these are designed to pop off in any manner. So they feel like they are on there very sturdily. We can see some of the detail there on the back, on the inside of the wing. Lots of detail there. Fantastic. Really nice. Just get that. There we go. Cool. We can see the panel here has got the copyright text on it, which is kind of funny because it's actually upside down. If we think about this being the top, I was wondering if I was holding it upside down, because if this is the top where we can see through to the inside of the cockpit, the text here is actually upside down, and you can kind of just see that there. It's kind of black on black, but that's kind of interesting. So we've got some parts that are going to open. On the box, it said that we could open this back panel. So I'm just going to see, we've got a little bit of a notch here. So I'm going to get my fingernail into that and see, okay, that just opens up. And we've got a bit of a sort of an engine detail there. It's silver with a black center, which is visible through that sort of, this is an open section. You can see there's no clear plastic. That is just a gap there in the sculpting. So you can just sort of open it there in the back, a little bit of an added detail there. There is a small sort of peg here, and it just snaps closed there. Not quite sure that's necessary, but it is a fun little added detail there. We can see that black panel sort of showing there. It doesn't sort of snap close, it just fits shut very quietly. Very nice there. And of course, we've now got this opening top canopy here as well. And I think, based on what I can see, we have a clear plastic top canopy here, which is very nice. We can see all the way through to the inside there, letting in a little bit of light. And of course, we can see the front cockpit there as well. Fantastic level of detail here. We've got a little bit of red here. The red little detail on this point is just a little bit more splodgy outside of the sculpted detail compared to this side. Really minor, but I do see that when I'm looking very close up. But other than that, really tidy paintwork. Of course, there's not too much in the way of painted detail. We've got a little bit painted on sort of the struts of the cockpit here, and a little bit, where else? On the back. That's right. Just some little red lights there on the back, and of course that little engine detail when I pop it open. So let's see, we've got a little bit of a notch here, so we can open this top cockpit up. Oh, that was nice and easy. Sometimes the cockpits can be very hard to open. And then we can see that we have a grey plastic interior with a little pilot seat. We've got a little bit of a peg there that's going to fit in between the legs of our little TIE pilot minifigure to hold it in place. Otherwise, they do tend to rattle around a little bit in there. This is a kind of a small cockpit. Most of the other cockpits, say with like X-Wings and that, we can open them up and place the figure in very easily. This one feels like you almost need tweezers, kind of like an Operation board game, to sort of put the figure in there, especially with those pegs to fit between. So that's going to be a little bit of a trick trying to get the figure in there. But I really do like this cockpit. Very, very nice. Very cool. Okay, so before I go and put the figure in there, I just want to test out this support stand, because as you can see, when we put the TIE Interceptor down, because of its wing shape, it's angled, when we put it down, it's just going to sit in a pretty odd looking position. Now, most of the ships in the Micro Galaxy Squadron range do not include any kind of flight stand, display stand. They generally just come as they are, but this one in particular does look kind of silly sitting like this. It doesn't have landing gear. TIE interceptors, TIE fighters generally don't have landing gear. We usually see them sort of suspended in hangars, and they kind of drop off their supports and fly off. So to get around that issue, we have a clear stand here with the Star Wars logo. It's kind of got some little details, kind of looking a little bit similar to the small clear plastic stands that we get from the small sort of speeder bike mystery box vehicles. Often include little sort of display stands for those ones, because they're just so small they kind of need something to clip onto. So it doesn't really have much in the way of other details. It's just kind of, I guess it's trying to be a display stand, kind of trying to look like it's not really there. So let's go and see how well this is going to clip on. We've got sort of these little stepped ramps here at the front, and we've got these bits here. So my instinct is thinking that I'll try sliding it on, because I feel like these stepped bits are a little bit in the way of the wings. So that just kind of slid on there like that. So that holds very nicely. It's not too sort of obtrusive. It keeps it up the right way. And I guess it will look kind of uniform alongside the other sort of speeder bikes and things like that if you have those ones in your collection. So I think this one was definitely one that really did need a display stand, and I kind of wish Micro Galaxy Squadron line would just include display stands, just even if this one was just raised up a little bit, something like that. But at least we've got a way of keeping this one off the ground so it doesn't look quite as silly. So I think that is a really necessary and well welcomed piece there. And if we can just, I'm hoping it'll just slide off just out the front like that. So it doesn't even sort of really clip on, it just kind of holds it in place, just sliding it on there. I am a little bit worried because these are like, there's a little bit of little sort of steps on that, and I can kind of feel that kind of just a little bit of a kind of a grate, kind of feels like a zipper or something like that. There's you can kind of see the texture on that there. I can kind of feel that pressing against it. So I probably wouldn't take it on and off a lot in case that kind of roughs up the plastic on the underside of the wing. But other than that, very, very cool. Holds that in place. Looks so much better. Okay, so taking that one off once more, let's try and get our tiny little TIE fighter figure into this cockpit. And I'm a little bit worried about how hard this is because I've got to try and get him in with my fingers, my adult fingers, and getting that little plastic clip that you can see there on the base of the floor in between his legs to hold him in place. And I'm not sure how easily this is going to go on. So if I press that button on the underside that I kind of discovered, it kind of lifts the seat, which I think would probably help to get him out a little bit, because if I get his legs on either side of that peg, it's going to hold him down towards the floor. I'm not really going to be able to reach him with my fingers to grab him out. So I feel like that's going to be more sort of like an ejector seat to get him out of the cockpit. I'm not sure that's necessarily going to help. It's not really going to raise the seat up in a way that I can get his legs into that peg, because that peg does not move with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and see how well I can sort of push him in there from the top. Okay, so I was just kind of pressing down from the top of his head. So let's see how well I managed to. Okay, I was just kind of pushing in blind. I just had him in his seated pilot position and just kind of pushed in. A little bit hard to show because it is just completely hidden in there. And I can kind of see the silver of his chest box through the window there. But of course, once I've closed the top canopy, it's pretty dark in there and they wear black, so I'm not really seeing it. It's one of those figures where you don't really need to put it in there because it's pretty much invisible, but I do still like the fact that we've got a pilot figure in there. It really does sort of just add just that tiny little bit extra detail. I know he's in there even if I can't really see him. Of course, I just want to test out that sort of ejector seat because I think that that's a fun little feature. So let's see if I can pop that up. Okay, it just kind of tips him forward a little bit, but it did put his helmet where I could reach it. So that does help. Just going to see if I can put him back in there again. This is really tricky to show because it's just kind of just a tight little space. But pressing down on his head, I can kind of get him in there. Really hard to show, but I can show you what he looks like in there. But yes, very nice. Fits in there. Doesn't rattle around, which of course is the point of those little clips, and that wasn't actually as hard as I feared. I was really worried that I'd be, having to sort of hold them with tweezers and putting them down in there. Thankfully, that wasn't too hard. And there we go. Overall, it looks pretty cool. Nothing on the wings moves. They're not designed to sort of pop off. We don't have any firing mechanisms other than that little button to push the figure up. This reminds me of the little buttons on the underside of vehicles like X-Wings that pop the little astromechs out of the astromech port. Just a way of sort of getting your tiny little figures out of the spots where we've got them stored. Overall, pretty tidy. We've got just a few little spots where you can see here on the texture, the black hasn't gone all the way to the edge. Really sort of minor things. There isn't like a splodge or anything like that because we don't have weathering, which generally means it's all pretty clean and tidy. It looks like it's fresh off the sort of factory line, ready for deployment. So just going to pop it back on its display stand once again because I have heard that the cockpit of the TIE Interceptor is different to the older TIEs from the line. So the one I have here on hand is the Outland TIE. This is Moff Gideon's one where the wings can adjust and sort of flatten as we see him landing on the ground in the Mandalorian series. So now that I've got these two sort of side by side, we can see some big differences, particularly in the size of the cockpit here. This one is a lot smaller, and we can even see the window here on the front. There is a big difference in that. And the top of this one, we do still have those sort of panels, but they are plain black. If I can get this one open, you can see that we don't have a clear window in the top of the tiny little cockpit window thing there at the top. It's just painted black, not clear. And as you could see from this one, we've got those clear window panels. It looks very black here now that I've got that closed, but when I open that, you can see that that is clear plastic showing through. So that's really fun. That's like a step up in terms of the accuracy there, just an extra detail, and the larger scale cockpit. So it will be interesting. I know that for some of the ships, they're kind of coming up with ways to re-release them. It would be interesting to see if we ever get versions of some of the other TIE fighters with this larger scale cockpit that they have now designed. It's really interesting to see these side by side. I was curious to see if the size difference would really be that noticeable in person, and I think that is. And I especially like the larger window at the front and the fact that that top opening now has a clear plastic instead of the black painted details there. And just looking at the sides, we can see that the grey plastic is pretty much the same color. It looks a little darker through here because we've got more sort of hinge detail here, kind of adding a bit of shadow. But these panels here are very, very close in color. Maybe a shade darker on this one. But I think they look really cool together because, of course, I'm going to put all of my TIE fighters next to each other for my display. And seeing these two together, really, really cool. Again, it would have been cool to have this one on a display stand or something like that, but because we've got that flat edge for the wing, it's going to stand up in the way that this one doesn't, and we need that support there. So I think that's really fun to see these side by side. And of course, one of the other comparisons I wanted to do, if I pop that one out of the way, is grabbing my Hot Wheels Starships Select TIE Interceptor. And of course, you can see this one has its included display stand, so it doesn't need any kind of support for the wings. It's raised up in a more of a flight mode, and you can really see the difference in the color here. This one is very blue toned. It still kind of looks a little bit more grey to my eyes on camera, especially next to this one. It's definitely more blue toned, and we have some black wash. You can see on the details here, we have some weathering to really accent those die cast metal details there. So if I put this one on this side, we can do a little bit of a size comparison. We can see just how much bigger. I can't even sort of fit the full wings in the shot here, but you can see the difference in the scale because, of course, most of the Hot Wheels Starship Select line are not in scale to each other. They are all kind of fitting within the same size box. They're all the same price point, so they're not in scale to each other. They're all just approximately the same size. The Micro Galaxy Squadron line, of course, is in rough scale to each other. So we've got very small ships, very large ships, and of course these are very different scales because of that. And I think that that's really interesting to show them side by side. Now that's so cool. Very different, but kind of similar in terms of some of the other ships in this range have huge size differences between their sort of different counterparts from other collectible toy lines. But these ones are actually a little more similar. Obviously, this one's bigger, but they're not too different really in terms of the price point because, of course, this is the light armor class, one of the cheapest offerings from the Micro Galaxy Squadron line. And honestly, in terms of sort of bookshelf display space, they're going to take up very similar sort of footprints in terms of how much space we're going to get, because of course this one takes up a little bit more space because of that extended display stand, so it does kind of create a bit of a longer scale. But overall, I thought I would have a clear idea about which one I like better, but honestly, I think they both are pretty cool. Honestly, I love the TIE Interceptors. They're so sort of unique. Somehow they seem a little bit more aggressive and menacing than a classic TIE fighter. Don't get me wrong, I love the original, but there's something about this aggressive shape that I've always loved. And so, of course, I knew I was going to buy both, but sometimes, even though you sort of know that you're going to love both, sometimes one sneaks through and becomes a bit of a favorite. Honestly, seeing these side by side, I can't pick a favorite. I really like them both. Like I said, there's something about the blue tone that's a little bit nostalgic for me because of the toys I had when I was a younger collector. But the detail on this one is just pretty cool. The display stand is just a little bit quirky. I love the sleek design of the Hot Wheels Starship Select display stand. I love how uniform they are across the line. They all match. They've all got the faction symbols and the name of the ship there on them clearly. This one looks a little bit quirky, but it is an officially licensed one. I just wish that we had more like this across the line, so there is a little bit more of a uniform look to the display stands. Most most of the ships from this line don't come with a display stand. Very, very happy that this one does, although it doesn't look quite as sleek as this one. But overall, this is a fantastic ship. I'm so very happy that I was able to source one from Australia. I was really hoping to find Series 4 here in New Zealand, but of course, Australia's not too far away, so the international shipping wasn't too bad. So really happy to finally have a Series 4 TIE Interceptor in my collection, and I think it looks fantastic. Not too hard to get that figure in. I thought that would be a bit of a fight, but he went in there nicely. I really like those upgraded details, like the clear window in the top of the cockpit. Really cool. Everything looks straight. Everything looks really tidy. No sort of massive paint flaws on it. Just fantastic. Oh, really fun when you get something you've been waiting a while to get and it looks just as cool as you imagined, possibly even cooler. So there you go. That was an unboxing and a little bit of a comparison of the Micro Galaxies Squadron TIE Interceptor with a couple of other versions that I had on hand. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Star Wars collectible and had a lot of fun checking out all of the details. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Micro Galaxy Squadron fan, I recently unboxed Gold Leader's Y-Wing. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Micro Galaxy Squadron unboxing playlist. This is the way.